Hey up, now then, how you doing? Welcome back to the Yorkshire Bike Mechanics YouTube channel. My name's Dave K. I hope you're having a good week and everything's alright where you are. It is the back end of January. Hoping for some warmer weather soon, but it's still rather chilly. But in the workshop today we have a really poorly e-bike. It's a Scott e-Genius. And it's poorly because it's just not working. Okay, the display is completely dead. It will not turn on. So it's as useless as a chocolate fire guard. You might as well hang your clothes off it to dry because it won't do anything else. So today's job is to find out what's up with it and what we need to do to make it work again. So let's crack on. So like most e-bikes, this one's no different. They're generally pretty bomb-proof until things go wrong. The best way of kind of diagnose a problem on an e-bike, if it's not really obvious, is to look at it in different ways. So what we do is we split it up. So this e-bike is made up of certain different components. We've got the speed sensor at the back, so that's one. We've got the motor, in this case it's in the middle, that's two. We've got a battery in the down tube, that's three. We've got the head display, this one's Purion, that's four. And the last component is all the wiring loom that connects it all together to make it all talk to each other, to make it all work. So if we think of it logically, the generally speaking, is that one of those components has failed. We're not sure which one it is until we have a look at each particular one and find out what's going on. Before we do that, we need to make sure that the battery is full of power or has some kind of power. So we whip this battery out, we check for the lights just to make sure that there's actually power there to begin with. So let's do that first. So here we've got the battery out of the bike. Now this is a Bosch battery, as you probably well know. On the end, on this particular battery, it's got a set of indication lights that gives you the charge level. Now there's a cover on top and there's a little button underneath which you struggle to get to because of this case. But what we can do is, just to make sure that there's power in this battery, we can actually plug the charger in and the lights should illuminate on the end. So let's plug it in and we can see. Oh, there we are. Don't know whether you can see that. So we can see that the lights have lit up on the end of the battery, which tells us there's a definite charge in there. It's actually nearly full. The end one's flashing, so that's quite normal of a battery that's actually quite full. So we know that there's life in this battery, which is a good start. So we can put this back in the bike. We know that that's okay as far as we're aware. There's no damage, it doesn't look damaged in any way. You see it's in quite good condition, so there's nothing there really to worry us. So the next thing that we need to do is we need to plug it in and see if we can actually get some diagnostics from it. Now don't forget that this bike's completely dead. It actually will not turn on at all, so we need to plug it in to see what's going on. So let's see if we can actually plug it in. We've got his diagnostics set up here on his laptop and we've got the lead ready to go in this port here. Now these things are pretty robust as well, but they don't like being jet washed. Although there's a little plastic rubber cover in that end, if you're going to direct jet wash onto these and get too close, then you're guaranteed to get water inside here, which can cause the problem that we're actually experiencing. But as I said before, this is a process of elimination, so let's see if we can connect it up to diagnostics. Let's see what it says. So we've got his USB logo up there, which you can probably see. Now normally what would happen now is the computer would recognise this, the software would recognise that it's been plugged in, and it will start to download all the information from the bike onto the laptop. In this particular case, we've got the USB connected, but there's nothing happening on the laptop at all. So let's see if it's a faulty plug or a connection, and it's still not reading, still not download the information from the bike. It's actually not connecting into the computer. So having wiggled this about though, we are getting some kind of response which could possibly suggest that there's water got in this port, or it's been damaged in any other way by pushing stuff in there that obviously doesn't fit, or something like that. So that could possibly be the reason why it won't turn off and on. It could be a faulty head unit. So the next thing that we need to do is let's have a look at the wiring that goes into the motors. Let's have a look at the connectors to make sure it's actually in where they should be, and everything looks all right at that bottom end. So let's do that now then. So let's think about where we've got so far then. We've had the battery out. We've established that there's life in the battery. We've put the battery back in the bike, and we've gone up to the head unit, the controller on the bars. Now we've discovered that we can't actually get that to connect to the Bosch diagnostic software, which potentially could mean that there's a fault on the head unit. And because there could be a fault on the head unit, we're unable to actually get any diagnostic information from this bike onto the laptop so we can actually see what's going on. So what we need to do, like I said before, is let's have a look at the connections in the motor. We'll just take this motor cover off. Now I've undone some of the screws already to make it a little bit quicker and easier. Okay, this exposes all the connections in the motor. Looking at this here, we can see that these connections are actually fairly secure. They're all in the right place. But one thing that you do need to notice here is there's something different that's not quite that common on most e-bikes. And there's more cables going in here than what we'd expect. Now these particular connections here, what they're for basically is this big one here transfers power from your battery to your motor. It also connects the charger up so you can actually send charge to the battery from the wiring loom further up in the bike. This particular one here, this top one here, if you can see that, that's actually the input from your head unit, from the controller, the Purion head unit. This one under here, this smaller one, if I lift these out of the way, this smaller one that I'm grabbing hold of there, this particular one is the speed sensor from your back wheel. So we can look again here, we can kind of familiarise ourselves with the different component that's going on this bike. These two here at the back that are not normally there on an e-bike unless you put them in. These two here are outputs for auxiliary equipment. Excuse me. So generally speaking, they're for lights, and both are actually connected here. Now that doesn't mean to say that they're actually live, because we can actually turn these outputs on and off within the Bosch software. But looking around this bike, we can actually see that there's no lights on this bike. So why we've got these two here, I've no idea. So what we need to do is take the battery out again, have a look and see if we can actually find these wires stuck up in the tube or just left ready to connect to light in future. Usually you've got a back and a front light on these. That's what these are for. But obviously there's no lights attached. But anyway, that aside, they all look well seated. There doesn't seem to be any damage in that area, and so I can probably safely say that they seem okay. So might be difficult for you to see in there. So these cables or wires, if you want to call them that, run up inside of this battery compartment here. You've got a charging lead which runs up to the top. We've got a Purion head unit lead which runs up to the top. But we've got some more wires in than what we'd expect. So there's one here which doesn't seem to go anywhere. Okay. So that's the answer to his question, where this actually wire goes, and it goes nowhere, and it's actually cut off at the end. So in itself, that isn't an issue, providing that the output is disabled. But we can't possibly find that out for now, because we just don't know, or we can't get the connection into the software. So now we've established that there's a cable going up through the battery housing which doesn't go anywhere. It's completely dead. There's no end to it at all, which suggests that either at some point someone's had lights on it and taken them off, or Scott's decided to put them in for people that want to put lights on the bike, and it's there in case you want to do that. Now that we know that they actually don't do anything, what I'm going to do is I'm going to disconnect those and eliminate the possibility of them causing the unit not to turn on. So these two at the back we're going to take out completely. Okay, the colours of the ends also donate what they're actually for. The different colours is obviously for outputs, for auxiliary outputs. So we've taken those out completely. They don't go anywhere, they're not doing anything. If one's loose, then the other one's not going to be used anywhere. I can't find anything else on the bike that would use them. So we'll disconnect them out of the system. We'll go back to the head unit and we'll see what happens. And there's nothing at all. It's still dead as a dodo. So now that we know that the bike won't turn on, we've disconnected the auxiliary power switches, okay, or the power cables. So they're out of the equation. We've had a look at the battery. The battery seems fine to us. The connections to the motor seem fine to us. This is actually looking like, at the moment, that we could have a faulty head unit. Now, what makes me think that that might be faulty is that when we connected it to the computer, we discovered that it actually, when you wiggled it about, wiggled that USB connector about, it started to actually come to life. And that makes me think that there might be something wrong with this particular head unit. So what we're going to do is we're going to change this head unit out and we're going to replace it with a brand new one. Now that's important from Bosch's point of view, because if we went to Bosch and we said we've got a problem with this bike, we need help, they will say, what have you swapped out and what have you done? So by swapping it out and changing things, we're actually helping them decide what the best course of action to take with this bike. So let's change the head unit. We don't need to unravel it all from down the head tube, because what we can do is we can take a new head unit and we can actually plug it straight into the motor from the box. So it's easy enough to do. So let's go ahead and do that now. Let's see what happens. So in here is a brand new Purion head unit that we use. We carry all components like this just in case we need to swap them out to find out what's wrong with them. We've got sensors, we've got head units, we've got a spare motor that we can transfer and swap out until we can find what the problem is. So here is the new head unit. We don't really need to unravel it all out of the box. We can leave it in the box like that. Take the cover off. Okay. There's the other end of the cable. There's the connector there. And there's the display that you can see. Just pull that out of its socket just like that, okay? And we'll take us new unit and we'll plug it in. These only go in one way. You need to be careful not to force them in if you feel that there's a bit of a restriction in there. You'll feel straight away that it's actually going in and it's the right way. If it isn't, don't force it. Okay, so that's in there now. Okay, we've plugged it in there now. Let's have a look at this display. We'll just manipulate this out of the box. Okay, and what we need to do is we need to turn this on through the head unit and let's see what happens. Let's hope. There we are, it's come to life. So, and everything's working as it should. So what we need to do is, before we go ahead and take this off, now that we've established that the Purion head unit were as issue, we need to plug it in to as diagnostics to make sure that those two 12-volt outputs are disabled. If they are, then that's fine. If they're not, we'll disable them, and then what we'll do is we'll plug these back in. They won't do any harm plugging them back in, but what they will do is such an important thing, they'll stop muck and rubbish getting into them ports, okay? So let's plug it into the computer and we'll see what happens. Okay, so it's actually telling us there's actually an upgrade for it, but we'll ignore that for now because it's not what we're actually here to do. So let's cancel that. We'll just say no. We'll get rid of that. Now what we're looking for is this particular section here. See if I can get you a bit closer. I'm hoping you're going to be able to see there. So it's this section here. Can you see where it says light switching function? Okay, and the bike light is disabled, which is exactly what we want. Okay, so we can see the walk assist enabled, but the actual lighting output's disabled as well. So that's brilliant. That's exactly what we want. So that means those two wires that were actually in them auxiliary ports are not doing anything at all. Okay, but they're perfectly safe being in there because there's no output enabled. So let's close this down. Okay, what we need to do then is take the old head unit off and reroute this cable where the other one went. It's fairly straightforward. I'm going to do that now and I'll get this on the bar and then I'll come back. So we're all back together, all done and dusted. Jobs are good and the display's up and running, the bike's running nicely, no error messages, and I think that was a good job well done. I hope you kind of found it useful, the kind of elimination side of the fault process of how we find things out in terms of what's going wrong with your e-bike. And you can use that process to find out most problem areas on your bike by eliminating certain things and understanding how it works. So, before I go though, I just want to say a couple of things. First of all, thanks for subscribing. Thanks for coming to watch us videos. Secondly, we've got a bit of an eBay site going at the minute with some stock, some overstock stock, if you like. And there's some really good stuff on there. I've put a link in the description. Please take a look. I think you'll find a lot of stuff there at a really good price. And secondly, a big shout out to Elvin and Martin from Muddersfield. Thanks for bobbing in to see us. It were great to see you. And thanks for that. So, on that note, toodle pip.